we'd like to begin by welcoming Lorraine to Soul to Soul. Welcome to the show, Lorraine.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Now, you've been part of this wonderful book. We spoke to Michelle just recently, the author of the book. You contributed a chapter to the book, Embraced by the Divine, and your chapter is called Getting Raw, Bungee Jumping into the Abyss, which is a wonderful title for a chapter. Tell us about the inspiration behind this.
Well, as I thought about what I wanted to call the chapter and went into some meditation, and that was essentially the title came through, and it was very resonant because I feel as if I am in and out of the state of free falling as I'm surrendering and allowing the divine to carry me through all these different life experiences. And it is very scary at times, very exhilarating at times. And with all of the shifts that we're experiencing on the planet, we're needing to do so much surrendering and going into some of these deeper places that we've never dared to go before. So the abyss felt very resonant and very applicable for the journey that many of us are having right now.
And indeed, having read your chapter, you were faced with your own abyss on several occasions, weren't you?
Yes. It has been, I would say, ongoing for probably the last 30 years since I experienced a more conscious awakening. And in the chapter, I talked about being diagnosed with cancer. Now it would be 4 times. And wow. Also being at a place, and I was very hesitant to even talk about the fact that I was in such a state of emotional pain in my relationship with the divine that I contemplated leaving, and I was very angry at God. I had so much repressed emotion that I hadn't realized that I'm sure played into the fact of creating a dis-ease in my body and all the other challenges I was facing at that time. And so it was a time of reckoning between the divine and myself. And it also brought me to a place of realizing that until I could face the idea of dying, I couldn't really make the choice to live. So it was a very powerful time. And also talking about some of the things that many light workers and many people, when they're at that brink, contemplate, is it time for me to go? Or I'm in so much pain, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. So I felt putting that on the table was important for those of us who have touched that piece and have been reluctant to own it.
I actually think that there's more people facing that situation than we're consciously aware of. It seems, as you mentioned before, it's a challenging time energetically for a lot of people, and a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want to be in this manifest world as it is with its corruption and its wars and all that. I want to be in a beautiful place. I want to be in a loving place. I don't know if that place exists. Now, the challenge that a lot of people are facing is let's create that. But for some, it just seems way too hard dealing with what's here already to even contemplate creating something else.
Yeah. There was a phrase that I heard many years ago, Steve, and it was, the strongest souls are on the planet right now. And what I come back to, and this was also part of the conversation that I had with God, was while I was in this very, very painful place, I found myself saying, I'm here for a purpose. I'm not going to leave that easy. And I feel that for many of us who are in these places of tremendous difficulty, that we're here in order to raise the planet into a higher frequency of love. And in order to do that, there have to be those of us who lead the way so that we can show those behind us how to do and navigate these narrow places. And there's this wonderful quote that says, if your path is difficult, it's because of a higher calling. So as I said to a friend of mine, what the hell did we sign up for, right?
It seems like that, yeah.
You know, I have to trust that if I'm in these types of circumstances with so much support, physically and non-physical, that I have it within myself, or will get the resources that I need in order to move through any experience, and to believe that no matter what I face, that my essence is bigger than any difficulty. And this is, I think this is a question that many people have. Am I bigger than any circumstance that I face? And sometimes the only way you can find out if that's true is to dive into the abyss. And you find out, wow, I am more powerful than I ever realized. And I don't have to do it alone.
And maybe the abyss isn't as scary as I imagined it to be.
Yes. It's only as scary as we make it, just like anything else. I am a Star Trek person, and one of the things I loved about that show were the holodecks, right?
Yeah, right.
So, when you look at, these circumstances, I think that we're walking through an expansive hologram, and we can rewrite the program. We have never been at this place before, and we're finding out the truth of our reality one step at a time. So I like to stay in that place of curiosity, even when it's difficult, and then come back to remembering all of the incredible blessings and all of the love and all of the support that I have in my life. And that strengthens me. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I like studying history. I think we learn a lot from history, and quite often as I study history, I see people like, burning other people at the stake and that sort of stuff because they were fearful that they might be a witch or whatever it may be. Things that we laugh at now because they seem so sort of almost silly and naive. And yet I'm sure that there's a lot of fears that we hold on to now that in a expanded state of awareness we would look at as being also silly and naive. And yet they seem very real to us while we're experiencing them.
One of the things that has definitely come up in conversations is this fear and concern about stepping out and being more visible, especially if there is a sense and a connection to past lifetimes where we've been killed, like you just described.
Yes.
Is it safe for me to really stand out and serve in the way that I am being called? And even with all of the assurances I often get from my own guidance, my humanity still questions, because there's the duality of our experiences right now. There is the light and there's still the density. And so I am reminded continually that when I stand in the light, I have nothing to fear, and that as long as I continue to keep my energies high and keep it clear and hold that space of love, I will be well, and trust that.
I was talking to someone just the other day who's a very, very logical person, and we were talking about having faith, not necessarily in those words, but basically that's what we're talking about, that things will improve, things will, come to us. And they were saying that they found that a bit preposterous because there was no logic behind that. Now, obviously, people would say things like that to you as well. How would you respond to those types of people?
I always find that kind of interesting. When, if you can't prove something, if you can't see the concreteness of something, then it's understandable that it becomes a question. So one of the answers that I would say is, what is your tangible proof of the energy of love? I mean, can you literally go to the store and buy a package of love? You really can't. So there are times when we have to let the mind go and to go into experiencing life from a different perspective. What's wonderful now is that science has also been proving a lot with energy.
Yes.
That there was a time that people would say, no way, so for somebody who's looking for something concrete, I would point them to some of the discoveries that science has found, like what is Emoto, I don't think that's his correct name, who was blessing water and then putting it under a microscope and seeing how the molecules change.
Indeed,
now,
yes.
for somebody like that, I would say, how do you explain that?
Indeed.
So, you know, there are times when I think that we can respond by bringing people to some of the more scientific approaches. And then there are times when, and this is just where I stand, I don't want to prove it to you. I just know what I know, and I think that sometimes that kind of a debate may be a little bit premature. Just like I never engage in any kind of religious conversations because people get so nuts.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? So I just invite that person to be open to possibilities, to be standing in that space of curiosity, which is how scientists approach anything, is to be curious. So if somebody is feeling so strongly about that, I would encourage them to explore it and find out the truth of that. I mean, there was a point in time when scientists thought that the Earth was flat. Well, look at where we are now. So
that's right.
Things have changed.
Actually, as a quick sideline, I recently read a paper by a scientist aimed at other scientists proving in a scientific way that the sun doesn't really exist up in the sky. And he used every bit of logic, everything from what we see is only a holographic illusion and quantum physics and all this, to make a wonderful case to back up the fact that the sun doesn't really exist. Now, most people would sort of say, well, that's nuts. And it's interesting that a lot of things like that, which seem to be outside of people's perceivable experience, seems nuts. Yet the more we're learning, the more we're realizing what we perceive is nuts,
Yes. And that we're all at different states of consciousness. I learned a long time ago, and stumbling a little bit in my enthusiasm of my own journey, to respect people where they're at, that we're at different states of consciousness, and to not to be invested in trying to convince somebody of whether something is true or not, to honor the space that they're in. And oftentimes one of the best ways that we can support them is to just pose a question, something that invites their mind to open a little bit more and then step back and let that seed germinate a little bit more, because we're all meant to awaken in our own time. And I trust that.
Yes. Actually, a wonderful gentleman who we've spoken to a couple of times on this program, Duncan Rhodes, who's the editor and publisher of Nexus magazine, said something really wonderful, and it sort of sums it up for me, at least anyway. He said part of this evolution that we're going through, this revolution of consciousness we're going through, must get to a point where we have to acknowledge that there isn't just one reality, that we all, each of us, have our own. And until we get to a point where we honor and respect each of those realities, whether they're compatible or not, we're going to continually be butting heads, And so he thinks that the real revolution is that of accepting the differences in people's perception.
I definitely feel that that's part of it, when we talk about unconditional love and holding that space for wherever a person is, whatever they believe, whatever they think is right for them. And it isn't about everybody speaking the same language and feeling the exact same way, because our world has evolved through diversity, and we need that diversity, or this world would be very boring if we all looked and sounded the same. And so it is in that stimulated debate where there is different perspectives that we expand, and we are able to see things far beyond our own limited capacity. So I'm in favor of just holding that space for us all to be right. And at times maybe we're all wrong, and let that be just perfect, because eventually we will all be moving. We're all moving in the same direction anyway, whether we realize it or not. And even if it's a downward spiral, right? Or an upward spiral.
Yes, exactly.
So I am absolutely fine with the divine being my co-pilot and trusting that everybody else has the divine as their co-pilot who is invested in bringing us all into the light. And I love that idea and feel that there is room for us all to find our way. We're all walking each other home, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's go back a bit in time now. You've always been a very intuitive person. How did you go from everyday person to the wonderful, inspiring person you are today? What was your progression there? I
think that I have always been intuitive all my life without realizing that I had those abilities. I actually came in with that. What was a defining period in my life was my mother's death in 1981. And from that, it caused me to ask many questions. And, a personal death is oftentimes, it opens a door. And several months after that, what I consider to have had was a spiritual earthquake. And one night I had a vision of myself standing in rubble, and my thought was, you are so full of crap. You have no idea who you are. And I sobbed. I literally dropped to my knees in terror. And the thought I had was, how can I trust any thought that I'm having as being anchored in any level of truth? And for the very first time in my life, because I'm not a religious person, I prayed and I said to God, dear God, now that I have seen some of this light, I will never go back into that darkness again. And I made a commitment to be on this path no matter what, and I wouldn't allow myself to get in my own way. I don't think I realized it, looking back in retrospect, how powerful that prayer was. And so it was a catalyst for me to begin to explore. And what happened after that was I felt this incredible hunger to understand. And what was so fascinating at the time, Steve, I was living in New York, and my apartment was right around the corner from one of the most well-known metaphysical bookstores in all of Manhattan, right?
Good place.
So you can imagine, I literally spent as much of my time there reading as much as I can. And of course, during that time in the 1980s, there wasn't the wealth of information that we have access to now. We didn't have the internet.
Yes.
So that was a launching point for me. And then from there, it's really been a question of following my instincts and seeing people being brought into my life. And it hasn't been a typical mental strategy. It's really been about listening and just allowing my own guidance to bring me through the last 30 years. And it's been a fascinating experience. It has been, as I said a little earlier, it has been one of the most painful, one of the most frightening, one of the most daunting, one of the most exhilarating, life-affirming, exciting rides I've ever been on. And I am so grateful to be on it, and I'm excited to see what's next.
One thing we have been talking about a lot, it's a theme that keeps reoccurring, is that throughout history, a lot of people have had to make a lot of sacrifices, become martyrs, if you like, to be able to achieve certain things or to help other people see certain things. I have a theory that although most of us do, historically speaking, do our greatest bits of growth out of great tragedy and great pain, I don't think it's necessarily a pre-requirement that we should have to do so. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love that idea. And I'm totally in favor. I have put in a request to the universe and have said, I have done my bit with drama. Thank you very much. I am totally open to now be moving forward in my life with as much ease and grace as I will allow. And I welcome the instruction and the support to show me where I may be throwing roadblocks on my path that are not necessary. So I am with you. I think that there is definitely value that comes from some of these places of difficulty. Whether it needs to be the norm, I don't believe so. I think it's more habit that we've just gotten into doing things a certain way because surrender has not come easily. We have mastered struggle and conflict and difficulty very well. And, I think that now at this time, as we're moving into more of this lightness and 5-dimensional way of living, we're learning that it can be easy, we can trust that, and it can be full of grace. And I think that the stories that we share that emulate those experiences of grace need to be talked about more and more, not as much of the difficulty, which has its value. Let's hear more about the blessings and the ease and the joy of our experiences that move us into higher states of expansion. It's time for that.
Indeed. Maybe that can be volume 2 of Embraced by the Divine. Now,
I'm in favor of that.
Absolutely. I'll have to talk to Michelle. Getting back to the book, what's been the response? What's been the change in your life since the book came out a little over 7 months ago now?
As I look back in retrospect and have read some of the other stories, I have so appreciated the rawness and the authentic voices of everyone.
Yeah.
I have come a long way since I wrote that. I can see that I was in a lot more pain than I am now. One of the biggest changes that I see in myself, and I've oftentimes likened it to how one experiences greater states of maturity, is I feel much less scared, much more anchored in my inner strength and trust as I walk through a lot of uncertainty. I've let go of a lot of things that I was holding on to that were not aligned with the next phase of my journey. And as a result of that, I've opened to different gifts and talents that I was not ready to receive. So I feel older, if you will, within myself, more connected with the divine than ever before, and healthier within my consciousness, within my body, and I feel different. I feel really, really different and very blessed.
Has it helped to redefine or reshape the work that you do at all in any way?
The work that I'm doing now is actually at a much higher level than the work that I was doing a couple of years ago, because I wrote that chapter, I think it was in 2013 or 2000. Right. I'm losing track of time quite. And as I've gone through more of my own dark nights of the soul, I have been tapping into some ancient energy that I used as a healer during Lemurian times, and I'm actually streaming into our conversation right now. And what's exciting to me is that a lot of the work that I was doing before, which were springboards for the work that I'm doing now, and my focus so much now is on helping people to really stand in their own power, in alignment with their divine spirit. And with that comes the emotional healing work, of course, which is one of my signatures, work that I've done for the last 30 years. But primarily, I'm working with leaders who are leading others and working with those who are light workers and empaths and love ambassadors and new paradigm leaders who are here to be the architects of a new reality. So that's different from the folks that I was working with before, and it's exciting to me to be mentoring and supporting those who are here to really bring this earth into heaven.
Based upon that, what would you say, generally speaking, are some of the challenges facing us at the moment to create that new reality?
I think one of the challenges is to stay anchored in love, no matter what we're seeing in our external world. There's so much shadow. There's a lot of shadows that's being acted out, which is part of this time, it's essential. And for those of us who have had the opportunity to see and know things ahead of time, before we can move into higher states of love and light, the shadows, the things that we have held back that many times we didn't even know was there, have to be released so that they can be transformed and transmuted, not to be gotten rid of, but really moved into a higher state of energy. And so we're seeing a lot of that being acted out in the world. You know, when you think about wanting to create a different reality, and or you know, a person who is redecorating, they empty everything out from a room and start from scratch so that they are creating a whole new environment. So for that to happen, we have to allow things to fall apart, to fall away, so that we're creating space for something new to emerge. We're experiencing that now. What doesn't fall away is the truth that we are, our true essence is one of love, the greatest, most powerful energy that exists in the universe. It's the essence of who we are. So as we witness what's happening out in the world, and I say witness rather than engage, to observe as if we were looking through these experiences through God's eyes, through the eyes of love, and asking ourselves, if I looked at this situation, if I interacted from that perspective, what would love say? What would love do? What would love see? What would love feel? And the more that we anchor in that place, and that comes from our own inner work, our ability to make those connections and that commitment. And the more we hold that space, the more we can create together waves of love that will overwhelm the world. That's the key. Love.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Always. What else is there, right?
Exactly.
And to move from a place of concept, from an intellectualizing it, and to have it drop down into our heart so we begin to embody it and live from that. This is what the journey is about right now, and everything that we're experiencing is guiding us towards that.
Yes. Now, we've talked a bit about your journey to get to where you are. We've talked about what you're doing now. What are your hopes or aspirations for the near future?
I don't know.
That is the best answer to that question, I got to tell you.
You know why I say that? I can think about some things that interest me. Like working with groups is a great joy for me, and I am currently hosting a group right now called Heart Connections with other light workers, which is great fun. The group dynamics is always the most fun because, you know, when two or more come together, what we create is something magical.
Yes.
I love the interactions of being able to be engaged with groups, and so I definitely want that to be a part of my future. I obviously love speaking. As you can see, I'm having so much fun talking to you. I definitely see more and more of that, and would love to see more of those opportunities where I can be with people live in retreats. The reason why I say I don't know is whatever I come up with, I know pales in comparison to whatever the divine plan is for me. So as I think about what it is that I'm wanting and have communicated that to Source, to my spirit, I stay open to see where my heart is wanting to take me day by day. And one of the ways I start my day is, where is my soul calling me to be today? And it may be that it's a day of play. I live my life very differently from the way that I used to live before, where I was online all the time and I was developing programs and doing all of these things. And I don't feel that call right now. I feel like there's more of a need for balance and play. I just got an adult coloring book and I'm doing some coloring so that I can allow that creative spirit, because it's through that creativity that we open to abundance and flow. So I'm trusting, again, there's that trust that whatever is wanting to come through me, that will make itself known, and so that what my choices are in concert with that higher desire. I've said what excites me, and now I'm opening that up to what is ready to unfold. And so I don't want to lock it into any kind of an idea that has any kind of limitation to it. You know, like I listen to some people who say, I have a 1-year plan and here's my business plan and here's my strategy. I can't work like that because it may be too small for what my destiny is. And I feel, and I've been told this, that I'm here to do some big stuff. So my attitude is bring it on. Whatever it is, bring it on. Even if I feel scared, and oftentimes I do bring it on because I know that I'll get the support that I need. And I want to look back on this life and feel that I've played well. And I had an opportunity many years ago where I actually went forward in my life and I look back at my life. I went to the point where I had crossed over. And I can feel the energy coming up on that right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes.
The thought, the emotion was glory, So I want to be open to allow the fullness of that glory to be experienced, whatever it is, and I'm okay with not knowing anymore.
It's interesting. I remember back in the early 90s, everyone was busy goal setting and setting short-term and long-term goals and that sort of thing. And back then, I remember being quite good at being able to set lots of goals and projecting flow charts of possible growth and all that sort of thing. Until one day I got to a point where I thought, this is just a creative exercise. It's an exercise in imagination of where maybe you'd like to be, but we take that exercise so seriously, and if that exercise doesn't manifest the way we saw it, we suddenly get stressed and worried and upset. And what you've just said is pretty much what I know we've been attempting to do within our own lives as well, where we're just trying to be open to the possibilities that manifest rather than feeling like we've got to try and be in control of things all the time. And
yes,
it's that need to be in control, which is really an expression of fear, really, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is. I definitely have intentions, and what I have let go of is how those intentions play out. The more that I stay open, and I get intuitive hits all the time. Many times when I'm standing in a shower, you probably get a lot of those great insights, you know, when you don't have a piece of paper handy, or there are times when things just start writing in my head. And I'm so blown away. A lot of times I'm in awe of what I'm receiving. I'm in awe of myself, so to speak. And I love that, because that's a great confirmation for me that there really is something bigger and more than me, and I'm curious to see where, as I said, where this is all leading me to. And I know it's going to be something wonderful, because why wouldn't it be? So I have some thoughts, I have some intentions, I have some ideas of what juices me. I'm sure if it juices me, it juices my spirit. And I can tell when I'm following my guidance, because I feel my soul smile. I feel this experience of joy, as if it's saying, way to go. Yes, thank you. So goal setting may work for a lot of people. To me, that's still leading with ego. And the shift that I feel that we're in right now is leading from spirit, and let the mind follow for the practical implementation of things. But let the source within us that is capable of seeing more possibilities than our mind can possibly comprehend bring me the solutions and the ideas that it knows I'm going to love, and then let the human part of me do my part in taking whatever actions is necessary, and also realizing that what unfolds in my life is not dependent on my taking the actions, because I'm in partnership with the universe that is able to move things beyond my comprehension behind the scenes. How many times have people had things happen where they say, wow, where did that seem to come from? Because they didn't specifically have a hand in it or think they had a hand in it. We don't realize how many seeds and how many waves we have created, sometimes simply by showing up, which to me is about grace.
Yes.
So I'm fine. I don't have to push the ball up the hill. I'm fine with letting it fall down and letting the universe run with it.
If people are feeling as inspired as we are about what you've had to say, how can they best contact you?
Well, I love hearing anything that people have felt inspired by our conversation, because it's wonderful to know what people's thoughts and feelings are. So they can contact me at my website, which is LorraineCohen.com. That's LorraineCohen.com. I've got some free goodies that are so aligned with what we've talked about today. And I would really invite people to check me out, take a look around the website, and connect with me.
And we will also have that address on the Soul to Soul website and the Soul to Soul Facebook page for all our listeners to be able to do exactly that. Lorraine Cohen, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today. We could probably talk to you for a whole week, but unfortunately we are limited in time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me. I have had a ball speaking to you, and it's thank you for all that you are doing to bring more light onto the planet, Steve.
Oh, that is our pleasure. That is what we are inspiring ourselves to do, yeah.
And I'm loving watching Patricia in the background as she's moving the energy around and just resonating with everything that we're talking about. So God bless you both, and may your lives be filled with more love and grace than you can even imagine.
Yes,
absolutely.
Amazing. You're an amazing lady. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
For meeting you.
Thank you so much.